Toombs County, Georgia, a place locals refer to as Bloody Tombs because of the rampant crime and apparent lawlessness of the county. But nestled in the heart of the county is a town named Santa Claus. Yes, you heard that right. Santa Claus. It's a tiny, tiny town. As a matter of fact, as of the 2020 census, the population of Santa Claus was only 204 residents. But during the build-up for the 1997 Christmas season, locals would find that not even Santa Claus was immune to the county's reputation. Everyone loves a good, strange, weird, or bizarre story. Well, welcome to the American South, where dark legends and haunted history lurk around every corner. Where superstition, folklore, and a touch of backwoods magic blend with everyday culture. Some say, in order to survive. This is Dixie After Dark. Santa Claus, Georgia, established as a city in 1941, where it's Christmas all year long. Literally. Residents keep their homes and businesses decorated all year long. And if that isn't enough, the street names are even in on the festivities. Candy Cane Road, December Drive, Rudolph Way, you get the picture. The idea came from local entrepreneur C.G. Green, with the aim of attracting tourists from U.S. Highway 1 to his pecan farm and next-door motel. And it did the trick, for a while. Then, the interstate came. Interstate 75 to the west and Interstate 95 to the east took traffic far away from Santa Claus, and the town's plan to become an easy-access tourist attraction faded away like a rare southern snowfall. As with most rural southern spots, though, poverty is the name of the game. The median income in Santa Claus is right under $28,000 a year. Regardless of this fact, the Christmas theme stuck with the locals, and even today, you'll find the tiny town decorated for Christmas, regardless of the time of year. The town's motto is Santa Claus, the city that loves children. And there was at least one family in Santa Claus that lived out that sentiment. Kim and Danny Daniels were a loving, popular family in the Santa Claus community. Kim had worked through a young life of struggles, though. She had become a foster child at the age of 3 after witnessing her father's murder. She bounced around foster homes for the next several years. Then as a teenager, Kim lost custody of her own children due to drug and alcohol addiction, which ultimately led to living out of her car. It would appear that Kim had hit rock bottom. With nowhere else to turn, Kim found herself barefoot on the steps of a pink single-wide mobile home that doubled as a church outreach building. The pastor's wife, Christy Wood, who would later become Kim's best friend, remembers that day. She came to our church in a little bitty car, crammed with everything she owned in the world. The church took Kim in and helped her every way they could. There, Kim met Danny Daniels, a quiet man who taught Sunday school there. The two fell in love, and despite Kim's current situation, the highly religious Danny Daniels stayed by her side every step of the way. Love-struck and ready to turn things around, Kim set on the journey of revitalizing her life. The couple married a year later, and Kim set out to right every wrong she had ever done. After years of hard work and dedication, Kim was able to regain custody of her own children. It was about this time that they noticed an unfamiliar face in the congregation that huddled inside the pink single-wide for Tuesday night prayer services. Then teenager Jerry Scott Heidler. Heidler went to the church for about 2 months, Pastor Wood said. He was quiet and withdrawn. He didn't have much to say. Christy Wood said Heidler made her uncomfortable, though. The pastor added, "I feel like the reason people weren't comfortable around him is that he wasn't comfortable around them. His social skills were zilch." Years passed, and the Daniels family now found themselves celebrating their 5th wedding anniversary in a ranch-style home on Dasher Street with 7 children. Danny's adopted daughter, 16-year-old Jessica, and Kim's 3 children, 10-year-old Amber, and twin 8-year-olds Brooke and Bryant. The Daniel also had 3 foster children, Amanda, age 9, Corey, age 4, and 10-month-old Gabriel. The Daniels family had already began the process of adopting the 3 foster children, and were hoping to have it completed by that Christmas. But as Christmas approached, things would dramatically shift. Around 4 in the morning on Thursday, December 4th, 1997, a farmer and his wife in Bacon County, Georgia, were awakened by their dogs barking. They looked out of the window, only to find 3 children walking down the road in only their nightgowns. The couple quickly called the police. There, the police identified 10-year-old Amber, 9-year-old Amanda, and 8-year-old Brooke from the Daniels home, 45 miles from their home in Santa Claus, Georgia. The children were in shock, but still coherent. They were able to tell the police who they were and that they had been taken from their home on Dasher Street hours earlier. Afterwards, they were driven to the middle of nowhere and just let out of the van. They had no idea of the events that had taken place back in Santa Claus. Deputies were dispatched to the family home in Santa Claus shortly before dawn. They found the front door open, but no lights or sound came from inside. The police called into the house, but no one responded. With the state of the 3 children found wandering the rural backroads 45 miles away, the Daniels home on Dasher Street was immediately treated as a crime scene. Police entered with flashlights as to not disturb any fingerprints that may have been left on light switches. They moved room to room, but it wasn't until they reached the master bedroom that anyone was found. There, police found Danny and Kim Daniels dead, covered in blood from what appeared to be large caliber gunshot wounds. Further in the house, they found 16-year-old Jessica, stretched out in the hallway, apparently shot at close range. In another bedroom, they found 8-year-old Bryant, dead, shot in the face. 4-year-old Corey and 10-month-old Gabriel was found alive, hiding in a closet. Authorities carefully processed the crime scene, which left them baffled. First of all, Santa Claus had always been relatively peaceful compared to the rest of Bloody Tombs. And to top things off, none of the Daniels' valuables had been taken, and the house had not been ransacked at all. It was as if the Daniels family had been murdered for no apparent reason. Toombs County Sheriff Charles Durst and the coroner arrived on site, and it didn't take long for the coroner to declare each victim had been shot with a shotgun. Danny Daniels had been shot in the back of the head, apparently still asleep. He never woke and never saw the intruder. Kim Daniels was shot in the face. According to the coroner, she was woke up by the initial blast and could have potentially saw her attacker. 16-year-old Jessica had also been shot in the face in the hallway. Speculation points to her investigating the gunfire. 8-year-old Bryant had been shot point blank in the head. He still clutched the teddy bear he'd been sleeping with. Toombs County deputies carefully processed the crime scene while investigators interviewed the now growing crowd of onlookers outside. No one had any idea who could have done such a thing to the Daniels. They were well loved in the community, and neighbors were at a complete loss. Unknown to the sheriff and investigators, though, the 3 young girls found 45 miles away in Bacon County, Georgia, had started to talk. The 3 girls identified the suspect as now 20-year-old Jeffrey Scott Heidler, saying he had once dated their sister Jessica. They had been awakened by the sound of gunshots, and Heidler said he was there to save them. They said they were taken in a black van with tinted windows that they did not recognize. They also told how 10-year-old Amber then had been raped and sodomized at a boat ramp out of the sight of the 2 children still in the van. Afterwards, they were driven to the middle of nowhere and let go. With that, the manhunt kicked into full gear. 2 Georgia Bureau of Investigations agents were dispatched to Alma, Georgia, in Bacon County, a place where Heidler was known to have roots, and the manhunt was over as quick as it started. The van was located behind Heidler's mother's home, and as authorities pulled up to the house, Heidler was walking out the front door. He made eye contact with the agents, then ran back into the house. The agents called for backup, and the house was surrounded. At that point, Heidler's brother came outside and said he was the only one at home, but agents had already seen Heidler. Bacon County Sheriff detectives had responded to the calls for backup and began a search of the house. Jerry Scott Heidler was found hiding in the crawl space beneath the home. Heidler refused to come out and had to be dragged out by 2 officers, where he was initially arrested on an outstanding probation violation warrant. Heidler's brother was arrested and held without bail on obstruction charges. The small town that originally had aspirations of bringing in tourists now found itself in the national spotlight. On Tuesday, December 9th, 1997, the funeral service for the slain family members were held at the First Methodist Church of Lyons, Georgia. The nave of the church held 4 coffins: Danny, Kim, Jessica, and Bryant. The 5 children left behind by the killer sat in the front row and had to be protected by police bodyguards from curious and pressing journalists. 20 pallbearers took up the seats on either side of the children. Many of those at the funeral service had come directly from Heidler's first court appearance in Toombs County. When Magistrate Ezra Aaron asked if Heidler understood the charges of multiple murders, Heidler answered with both "Yes, sir," and "No, sir." Also, when asked if he understood what could happen to him if convicted, Heidler responded no. Without looking up from the papers in front of him, the judge simply stated, "You could be executed." Heidler had confessed to GBI agents, reportedly with no emotion or sign of remorse at all. "I killed them all," Heidler told him, although in court he pled not guilty and said that he had nothing to do with the murders. Jerry Scott Heidler's story, according to the GBI, was that he used a stepladder from the garden to enter the house through a bathroom window, then retrieved a shotgun from Danny Daniels' gun closet. He shot 8-year-old Bryant first while the child slept, then Jessica as she ran by, apparently to alert her parents. He then ran to the adult Daniels' bedroom and shot them in quick succession. The day of the murders, Heidler says he attended the funeral of a stillborn baby he supposedly fathered with 18-year-old Marie Spivey, although Marie admits she was not aware who the father was. That night, he walked to a friend's house and spent time playing pool, had 2 beers, then walked to his mother's house. When people at the home started talking about the stillborn, Heidler jumped up and ran from the house back to his friend's house, stole a van, then drove to Santa Claus. He states he initially went looking for Jessica because she had rejected him. Heidler also told the GBI how he repeatedly pulled the trigger, complaining how the gun hurt his shoulder and ears. After the shooting, he ushered the 3 girls that were later found in Bacon County out of the house and into the stolen van. He says he remembers driving to the Altamaha River between Applin and Bacon counties, where he took 10-year-old Amber to the boat ramp, out of sight of the other 2 girls. After the assault, he threw the shotgun into the river, where it was never recovered. After abandoning the girls on a country road, Heidler drove back to his mother's house. There, he would be found by authorities that afternoon. Latrell Mosley, Heidler's mother, claims Heidler arrived at her house in the early hours of the morning and went to sleep on the couch. She states she left the house shortly before noon for a beauty parlor appointment and had to wake him up. When she got back home, the police had already arrested him. Marie Spivey, the 18-year-old former lover of Heidler who had suffered the stillbirth, is also the mother of Heidler's son, 2 years old at the time. She claims Heidler had been depressed all week about the baby's death. Marie also stated that Heidler believed he did not have long to live because of heart and lung problems. There has never been any evidence of lung issues, but Heidler previously had heart surgery at 4 years old for a cardiovascular defect. It wasn't uncommon for Heidler to visit Marie and their son, oftentimes staying the night. The day of the Santa Claus murders, Marie states that Heidler did stop by and stayed most of the afternoon until she took him to his mother's home around 4:30 p.m. Heidler said he would return after taking a shower, but he never did. Marie does state that Heidler called her hourly on the phone up until around 10 or 11 that night. The later calls came from the home of Jerry Johnson, the man whose van was used in the kidnappings. Jerry was a wheelchair-bound 59-year-old in Alma who had young people drop in all the time to play pool on his back porch. Jerry states Heidler arrived around 8 that evening and left around 10:30, apparently on foot. The belief is that Heidler returned later that evening, snuck into the house, and stole the keys to the van. Jerry reported the van missing and Heidler's name before the van was found behind Latrell Mosley's house. "I really didn't know that much about him," Jerry said in an interview. The other people I got around my house, they don't steal and they don't use my vehicle without me knowing it. Latrell Mosley says Heidler met the Daniels 2 years prior to the murders, when his younger sister, Joanne, was in foster care with the Daniels for a few months, which Latrell claims was due to her falling sick and unable to care for her children. After that, Heidler had built a rapport with the Daniels family and stayed overnight with them often. Friends of the Daniels claim they were helping Heidler overcome drug and alcohol problems. Latrell claims Heidler and Jessica dated, claims that the friends of the Daniels refute. Family friends do say Heidler showed a higher interest in Jessica, and that Danny Daniels had also noticed that. They said the two never dated though, and that Danny had even discouraged Heidler from the idea due to Jessica being underage. Kim Daniels' best friend Christy disputed the idea that Heidler ever dated Jessica. She went on to say, "People teased Jessica about how much Heidler liked her. Jessica was a self-conscious girl of 14 or 15 then. Heidler was 18 or 19, I think. He'd always call her over to the car and want to talk to her. He knew that Jessie was too young, but we had the feeling that she was the reason he hung around. She wouldn't have anything to do with him, though." Strange enough, the Daniels didn't know Heidler as Jerry Scott Heidler. To them, Heidler went by the name Scott Taylor. The reasons for this alias are still unknown. While Heidler awaited his fate in jail, both the defense and district attorneys pushed for a change of venue. The defense, for obvious reasons, but the district attorney pushed for a change of venue because he said too many times the Georgia Supreme Court overturned death penalty cases from rural counties where cases were overly publicized. While all that was being worked out, on July 6, 1999, Jerry Scott Heidler escaped from custody. He didn't get very far, though, but the investigation uncovered 75 homemade weapons in his cell, crafted from unscrewing wire cages and smoke alarms. Heidler was quickly captured and returned to jail. The trial began on August 30th, 1999 in Walton County, Georgia. Prosecutors went after the death penalty, while the defense tried to get pity from the jury on a mental illness defense. Before the events in Santa Claus, Heidler had a record, but a small one compared to what he was now looking at. He had been arrested once for stealing video games, knives, and porcelain dolls from a local business. He was on probation in both Toombs and Bacon counties for driving while intoxicated, and facing felony charges for stealing an ATV in Alma. There were no violent crimes recorded in his past. A young mother testified that she had hired Heidler to babysit her 3 children in exchange for a room in their house. She said Heidler was good with the children, and she couldn't have managed without his help. She describes him as a quiet person who rarely left the house. Another defense witness testified that the Heidler family moved around every few months, and that Heidler himself spent time in foster care before being placed for a while in a special treatment school because of emotional problems. Sylvia Boatwright, Heidler's foster mother when he was 11 years old, said he had imaginary friends and a mouse that he carried around in his hand. She also added, quote, "Scotty was also afraid of the dark. He was afraid a knife would come through the ceiling and cut him." Marilyn Dryden, Heidler's teacher at a school for children with learning disabilities, says Heidler mutilated himself by picking at his skin until it bled. A forensic psychologist from Augusta testified that Heidler suffered from a severe case of borderline personality disorder. He said Heidler had 8 of the 9 symptoms, including suicide attempts, outbursts of uncontrolled anger, and frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Ultimately, though, the defense strategy didn't work. On September 3rd, 1999, the jury found Jerry Scott Heidler guilty of 4 counts of murder, 3 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of aggravated sodomy, aggravated child molestation, and burglary. He was sentenced to death a day later, with additional 2 life sentences, plus 2 110-year terms in total. Jerry Scott Heidler currently sits on death row at the Georgia Diagnostic and Classification State Prison in Butts County, Georgia. Santa Claus, Georgia had always been relatively peaceful before then, and ultimately it returned to that state in the aftermath of the Daniels family murders. The town still upholds its tradition of decorating for Christmas every day of the year, and still uses the motto, "The city that loves children." The town of Santa Claus refuses to let the actions of one person taint that motto or the traditions that the town has come to be known for. Still, one can't help but wonder, does the onset of the actual Christmas season bring the memories back up? In a town whose identity is Christmas, are nights around the Christmas tree never as they once were?